Ladies and gentlemen, in fighting game parlance, this is the final. What's happening, everybody? Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, and the time has finally come for your Stanley Cup Championship prediction for the 2015 NHL playoffs, 2015 Stanley Cup playoffs. It is the greatest trophy in sports. It is the greatest playoff in sports. It is the most exciting time of the year for any hockey fan, and we have a great cup final lined up here for you. The Eastern Conference champion Tampa Bay Lightning, who, in the estimation of many, including myself, upset last year's Eastern Conference champion, the New York Rangers, in 7 games in Madison Square Garden to win the Eastern Conference Championship, going up against your Western Conference champion Chicago Blackhawks, who upended, again in another upset, the Anaheim Ducks in 7 games, beat them in Anaheim in Game 7, the road team winning both Game 7s. Very, very interesting. Both of these series, the Eastern and Western Conference Championships, went to a Game 7 for the first time in, I believe it was 16 years, something like that, something along those lines. Someone correct my math if you can find it. And who told you both series were going to go to Game 7? This guy. Yeah, I got one wrong. Shut up. So obviously I missed the Eastern Conference one because I told you to take the Rangers. That didn't work out. But I did perfectly predict the Chicago Blackhawks winning a series for the second time in this playoff. That is my fourth perfect prediction of these playoffs. I'm 4-3 in the Eastern Conference and 4-3 in the Western Conference. So I'm 8-6 picking these series. Guaranteed to be over 500. That's great. But all that matters is that you correctly pick the Cup champion. So here we go. Let's get into it. Tampa Bay is going to be hosting this series by virtue of having a better record, I believe, or it might have something to do with the All-Star game. I can't even remember anymore. In any case, if this series does go to 7 games, it's going to go to 7 games in Tampa Bay. The Lightning now on the season are 62-40, a full 22 games above 500, 317 goals scored versus 259 goals against. Chicago, to their credit, 56-39 on the season, 285 goals up, 239 goals down. Season series between these two teams, they only played each other twice this season. Tampa Bay was 1-0-1 against Chicago this year. Tampa Bay winning their one game in regulation 4-0 and losing a 3-2 shootout earlier in the season. So they outscored Chicago 6-3 in those 2 games. We've made much about what a great home team Tampa Bay was this year. They've pushed their record to 37-14 at home overall this year. Interesting to note, they're only even money in the playoffs. 5 wins, 5 losses in Tampa Bay. And when you think this is a team that's only lost 14 times at home all year, the fact that they've lost 5 times at home in the playoffs may be a little surprising. Chicago, to their credit, 29-21 on the road this year. They are +1 in the playoffs on the road at 5-4. In Chicago, the Blackhawks are 31-18 on the season and an astronomical +6 at home in these playoffs. They are 7-1 in Chicago this playoff, and I think that is going to come into play here big time. To their credit, Tampa Bay, still a sub-500 team on the road. To be perfectly honest, I can't say a thing about them anymore because they're +4 in the playoffs. This is an 18-23 road team coming into the playoffs. Right now they're 25-26. What that means is they are 7-3 on the road. And as we've seen in the last few seasons, it always seems like that road warrior team is the team that ends up winning it all. Tampa Bay is 12-8 in these playoffs, 55 goals scored in 20 games, only 48 goals against. Tampa Bay has played very well on the defensive side of things. Chicago, to their credit, 12-5 in these playoffs, though with those couple of triple overtime games, you can basically toss a couple of extra games on there in terms of work, just really work rate on these players and their bodies. 12-5, 56 goals up, 50 goals down. The biggest X factors I see here for the Tampa Bay Lightning. This is a series that features 6 of the top 10 point scorers, 7 of the top 10 goal scorers, 5 of the top 10 players in plus-minus, as well as 4 point-per-game players. This series features all of that combined between these two sides. But that makes me ask the question, is Ben Bishop going to be the one that is the difference. We've seen Corey Crawford struggle in these playoffs. That's just, call a spade a spade. He's struggled at times in these playoffs. Now, yes, he's faced higher scoring teams than Tampa Bay has. Tampa Bay faced Montreal and the Rangers, who are low-scoring, defensive-minded teams. But Crawford has struggled a little bit in these playoffs, and Ben Bishop's 2.15 goals against average, as well as his 3 shutouts in these playoffs, say that he is the difference. Another major X factor I see here for the Lightning, they definitely have the edge in the special teams game. They have a better power play and they have a better penalty kill than have the Hawks in the playoffs so far. They also play a much more defensive, tight trapping style of game. They displayed that against the Rangers. The Rangers at times could not get anything going in that series. Same with Montreal. Now, that has the ability to break up one of the major cogs of Chicago's offense, and that is that long pass. And Tampa's 4-man trap, basically clogging up the whole center of the ice, that has the ability to break up that big play kind of style that Chicago has. Now, they can counter that with somebody like Brandon Saad, who is just insanely fast and has just been really displaying his speed in these playoffs. So they can counter that, but Tampa Bay's got a weapon there. They've got something that they can use to really fight off one of the major attacks of the Blackhawks. Biggest X factors here for Chicago. I mean, experience is on their side. This is a core and a team that is going for its 3rd Stanley Cup in 6 years. We could be seeing the dawning of the new dynasty in hockey. I mean, 3 cups in 6 years, that would certainly qualify. And despite all this like extra playing time, these double overtime, triple overtime games, what was proved to me beyond a shadow of a doubt was that 2-day layoff between games 6 and 7 in the Anaheim series showed me without a shadow of a doubt that Chicago's got plenty left in that gas tank. And with this kind of extended break here between the end of the last round and the beginning of the Cup Finals, I think Chicago's really got a lot left in their tank here, so I don't think fatigue is going to be an issue for the Blackhawks in this series. Another major X factor here for Chicago is going to be their physicality. It is indisputable that Tampa Bay is not as physical a team as Chicago has had to play in these playoffs. They're not as physical as Minnesota, and they're certainly not as physical as Anaheim. So that whole only having 4.5 defensemen argument against the Blackhawks, and oh, you know, these guys are going to be worn down by taking all these hits, the whole no human being can take this many hits line in reference to Duncan Keith, that kind of goes out the window because Tampa Bay is not a physical hockey team. And it puts the physical advantage squarely in Chicago's court because they have to survive the Western Conference. And you can't survive in the Western Conference, really, if you're not at least a bit on the physical side compared to Eastern Conference counterparts. That's why Detroit is a much better fit in the Eastern Conference than they are in the Western Conference. So physicality definitely in Chicago's favor. In a series that ends in Game 6 in Chicago, ladies and gentlemen, your 2015 Stanley Cup champions will be the Chicago Blackhawks. I think this is a 2-2 series through the first 4 games, and I think it's 1-1. I think Tampa Bay gets one in Chicago. I think Chicago gets one in Tampa Bay. I think they go back to Tampa Bay in Game 5. I think Chicago upsets Tampa Bay at home. Again, they've only been an even-Steven home team in these playoffs. A little bit different home team than we saw through the regular season. I think Chicago's going to be able to take advantage of that, given that they've played fairly well on the road all season and in the playoffs. Game 6, back in Chicago. I like the Blackhawks winning it on home ice. As far as your Conn Smythe Trophy winner, it's going to be really hard to pick between Taves and Kane. You've got the ultimate leader, the ultimate kind of team captain, probably arguably one of the best ones since Messier. And you have Patrick Kane, who has really delivered in these playoffs and has just been a playoff dynamo his whole career. Going to be hard to pick between those two guys. It may come down to whoever scores the game-winning goal in Game 6. Who knows? It's a tough, tough call. My lean is towards Kane, but it's kind of 50-50, kind of a coin flip at this point. However, there's your prediction, folks. Your 2015 Stanley Cup champions in 6 games, I believe, will be the Chicago Blackhawks. Who do you think is going to win this series, Tampa Bay or Chicago? How many games? Tell me in the comments section below. Once again, it has been fantastic coming on here, doing these playoff prediction videos for you all and with you all. It's been great to hear your input, great to hear your agreeances and your disagreements with me. I love hearing it all. I love doing these videos. You can bet your butts I'm going to be back here again next year. That's it for me, Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter. In 6 games, the Chicago Blackhawks are your 2015 Stanley Cup champions.